I have no idea when we're going to start, when it actually goes live, but I could just, oh, I think possibly looks like we're starting, and I can just chop off the beginning once I guarantee that we're live.
Okay. And take 3. Go.
Hey guys, it's two guys T and D here, and we're doing some more world brewing. And this time we've got ourselves another special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. Hey,
Is he behind me? Hi everyone, my name is Mike. I'm with the channel Mike the Piper, where I do stuff about RPGs and tabletop RPGs. That's pretty much what I do because I really love that sort of thing. So it's great to be here. I love these guys. They're two phenomenal people. I've played with both, and I'm very much looking forward to today's world building chat.
Right. Now, Mike, have you had an opportunity to see us do a world building chat, like one of the few videos we've done around this? So I hope you're okay with us jumping around and just doing a lot of brainstorming, because that's typically what we do. We had Drake a couple of weeks ago, and it worked out really well. So I think, Harry, you had an idea of an area in your world we wanted to kind of tackle.
There's an area in my world called Torna. I've got like one sentence, pretty much. It's a big forest that people are scared to go into. Like even like the greatest empires, most powerful empires of the world just do not go in this forest, despite all of those natural resources of wood and whatever the hell that's going to be in this forest, but they just don't go in there. There's legends of whole legions of hobgoblins just going missing in this woodland.
Interesting.
But I have no idea what's in there, so that's just, whatever jumps into your brain at this moment.
Okay. Well, first off, what about this forest scares people? I think that's like probably the main thing. Like things just go missing. Do they just get and how do they go missing? Do they get lost? Do they just get ripped to pieces by some sort of like Cthulhu-esque monstrosity that's living inside there? And if so, is that thing an apex predator? Are there more dangerous things out there? Could the forest be alive? There could be that where there's magic just permeating this huge forest. And if so, maybe there are some daring individuals that take these magical trees to cut them down, to use them for, who knows what. Maybe they make magical arrows. The trains that are in your world, perhaps they are also fueled by some of this magic wood. And if that's the case, then it would make sense that people are trying to encroach upon it. But as a living entity, perhaps this huge forest is fighting back.
Yeah, that's what I thought initially. Was perhaps this entire forest is a single organism.
Oh, yes.
I
love
entices
that.
these people in for food. So whether it makes a trail of those sort of will-o-wisp type creatures
Yeah.
to entice people in.
I love that idea. That's an awesome idea, Harry. And like many like large predators, there's oftentimes these parasites that are on it, and that's like the other things that live there. They're like the parasites in this great big living organism. That's an awesome idea.
And perhaps even this forest could have been like created over the centuries. Maybe the forest used to be, just a standard forest when perhaps an archdruid was like murdered in the middle of this forest, and because of such an interconnectivity to nature, his spirit or his essence, flowing into this forest created this defense. The forest has to be protected, and it has just since grown and evolved and become this whole network now, where the trees know that you're in there, the forest knows that you're inside it, before you even realize what is going on. So you have like things like blights and other sort of like plant-based creatures, moving through the woods, as sentinels, or even if it's one organism like white blood cells,
Right.
where these creatures, kind of hunt down and destroy anything that tries to come in. So they, think of like, let's say, the other races of creatures as like a viruses, where it's like as soon as you try and enter in there, they come in and they try and wipe you out.
Yeah. So just kind of building off that idea, Mike. So Harry, what are you thinking? So is it like anything that enters this entity is like that virus, like much like a human body would treat something as a foreign object and try to fight it with its white blood cells and stuff. So is that how this forest works, or is it like a higher functioning thing? Like maybe certain things, if you do certain things, or if you don't do certain things, maybe it's more willing to let you pass through it. Or is it like literally like no one goes into Torna because they know no one ever comes out. So
Well,
what are you thinking?
I'm thinking perhaps it used to be a little bit more sort of sentient, as this druid spirit that Mike was talking about is like just sort of manifested itself in this forest, and he hasn't gone quite insane yet. I just imagine this druid just over the thousands or hundreds of years or whatever, just going slowly insane as he's sort of just ever growing outwards and just alone in this void.
Right.
Oh, okay. So perhaps instead of being murdered, perhaps this archdruid has reached a level of ascension, that all druids try to. So he's actually become one with the forest, using either his druidic magic or just his own abilities. Has actually become the forest. The druid has become this entity, which is now Thorin, excuse me, and now he's protecting it, and perhaps the only ones that can actually go into this great forest are druids, and he's achieved an almost demigod like status where druids go in to make pilgrimages
Yes.
into the center of the forest, for offerings and everything else. And these other creatures, these other these blights and all these other even the animals, they watch the druids and they protect the druids, and whatever this druid's name is, perhaps it's his or her name is invoked as a kind of a ward of protection when they come in. So they come in, they must speak this this great archdruid's name, which is kept extremely secret because no one is allowed to go into this very, very sacred, massive forest. They come in and there are sentinels, dire wolves, and owl bears, and other such creatures that just kind of lead them to the center. They make an offering, they do their prayers, and then they leave. And they're very careful not to disturb anything. While the forest and woods are ever changing, never moving. They can step on a branch or whatever, but like fire or anything else, or hewing down a tree, this is not allowed, as it's a very sacred, huge sacred forest. So maybe something like that, if that would kind of be, and if you wanted to go into that direction. It also depends too, a lot of it, how I find like how the press of technology and magic kind of fight against each other, in kind of like that thing. So where you have other parts of the world where, technology is now much more rampant, maybe people think a lot less about magic. You have this kind of like butting of the heads. But then when you have like an area like that where there's so much, this nature magic, this beautiful natural world that's just kind of encapsulated into this one area, where technology cannot encroach, like this is our wall, and as much as, railroads and guns and everything else, like the more, mundane, non-magical sorts of things push against it, the more it pushes back. So, it can create quite an interesting dichotomy, especially if that's that's a story you're trying to tell, and definitely for world building, I find that to be kind of a nice where it's nothing so black and white, and you get these like kind of shades.
I don't like black and white. I like grey. It's nice and different shades of grey. So, one thing that
Like
I think
50
we
of
talked
them?
about is
Yeah.
why do people want to venture into this forest if they are not druids? So, what resources? Is that usually why people want to go and destroy things
So
and take stuff?
that's a really good question. And I think one of the things that oftentimes will bring others into a place is exactly that. It's not a resource. It's rumor. So what rumors would be abound, Harry, that would, whether they're true or not, maybe some of these rumors aren't even true, but people have heard it. Like maybe this archdruid had some artifacts of extreme power, and that might be a lore that draws people in there. Mike had mentioned earlier about the wood. Like, if you can harvest some of this wood,
Yeah.
what magical properties does this wood have, and how could you potentially use it in the world? So that might make it worth the risk for people to maybe venture in, find certain trees, find other certain types of flora that's in there, or maybe even fauna that live in here. Like, if you can find this rare magical beast, if you can, kind of harvest this beast, it'll do X, Y, and Z. Maybe it has certain healing properties, or maybe prolongs a life. Maybe that was something that's one of those rumors is, druids live a very long time. How did this druid live so long? Is there something in the water? You think of like, the help me out here, Fountain of Youth that was searched for forever in Florida. So maybe there's this rumor that there's some fountain of youth there that if you drink upon this water, it will prolong your life, if not make you extend your life indefinitely.
Oh, definitely. Also, I mean, even if you went something so mundane as furniture, and just
Yes.
stay with me now for just a second.
That's what I was thinking, though. That's why I'm laughing.
So, I mean, the druid becomes one with the forest, and he changes the trees. The trees now have this beautiful, like, deep crimson wood color, and it's highly sought, much like, for example, teak. There's been quite a while that teak has been a very, very valuable, very desirable wood, or even like Gabon ebony and things like that. Perhaps, having this, let's say, let's use a very generic name like bloodwood, for making like bloodwood desks and furniture and things like that, are highly, highly sought after. Nobles and incredibly wealthy merchants spend, hundreds, if not thousands, of platinum pieces just to get a desk or a chest of drawers or a four-poster bed made out of this special bloodwood. Or even, for example, if someone wanted to make like a bloodwood handled revolver or pepperbox gun made of this, it's like, oh wow, this guy's got status. It could be something as mundane as that. Just the wood is highly sought after now. And then, of course, if you wanted to go in that direction, you could say, okay, well, the very edges of the forest, it's like a pink color. It's okay, but it's not worth as much as the ones that are in the center. So you have to go into the center to chop down one of these, like, beautiful bloodwood trees and try and haul it back. Now, of course, that's like saying, I'm just going to go in and pull one of these dragon's teeth out and then book it out of here.
Yes.
Because dragon's teeth are really worth a lot of money. I can't kill the dragon, so I'm just gonna, go in, do some dentistry, and like GTFO as quickly as I can. Now, keep in mind that's pretty much suicide. However, if you look at it, and that could be the exact same thing with this forest. Like, you want to go in and get like the most darkest crimson wood, go for it. Notify me of your next of kin, but fill your boots.
Right.
And that's something to look into, because again, it can be as mundane as that. Also, if this wood contains magic, fuel, even like if you wanted to, let's say, make the spacers on railroad tracks to help trains go faster, much faster, like it just helps, like this magical this arcane energy goes right through the rails and allows you to travel at incredible speeds. Well, we got to get things faster. We got to move people quicker. It's basically something to basically try and condense the world and you can do that using this, this magical wood.
Or maybe, I know one of the things we had talked about, like off stream, Harry, is that, excuse me, one of the ways that the older mages travel is by these like teleportation circles, or what I'm thinking as Mike's talking is maybe there's these doorways. You build these doorways with this wood, these arches or something, and when they're inscribed with certain runes, they allow you to maybe pass through them, much like druids can pass through trees. So you can, maybe mages have figured out, wait a second, if we can attune this wood in a certain way, it allows us to quickly travel from point A to point B. That's really a great suggestion, Mike.
That is a great
I don't know
suggestion. That's yeah.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And the doorways, that's a great idea. Again, you can move goods, you can move people, very quickly from point A to point B. And perhaps, using like the darkest woods allow you to travel further. So maybe they're like, there's this very ambitious project that, people are trying to get like the darkest wood because they want to go from one end of the continent to the other. And it's like we can save, so much time because the, traveling by train or horseback from these areas is so fraught with danger that we need to connect cities, and we can't connect cities if,
Right.
people are dying in the process. We can't do that. So, it's basically like pushing, again, it's technology pushing back against this natural world.
Lionel knows
also
exactly how dangerous railroads
Yes,
are.
yes, I do. Yes, but it's not even that, because so one of the first hurdles is getting into the woods, getting your reclaiming this wood and getting it out of the woods again. But I would say that your journey wouldn't even end at that point, because once the word gets out there, oh my gosh, these guys have this shipment of this bloodwood or whatever it might be called, Harry, and all of a sudden you are like primo target number one, because it is so rare and so valuable that like everyone would want it. And that's probably why your Iron Kingdoms, they've lost whole legions, sending whole legions of their hobgoblin warriors in there to try to reclaim some of this wood. Maybe they lose whole legions just to claim enough wood from to make one desk, like Mike was talking about. You lose like a legion just to get enough wood to do that. But yet people still do it. They still do it. Everyone still does it. That's how I love that idea, Mike, that it's something is so valuable that it has that draw.
Yeah.
And I could just see. Yeah.
You could even make a different type of even a monetary value. You could even say there's you've got your copper, your silver, your gold, your platinum, but then after that, you've got I want to buy 150 acres of prime real estate. Here's 12 logs of bloodwood. You can even use it as a form of currency, but a form of currency that is so high that the average person, even the average noble, will probably never see something this big, this expensive. Even if if you paid in logs, or if you pay, and wood, normally wood, obviously people don't think of wood as a form of currency, but when you have something like this, for example, in the 19th century, aluminum became more prized than gold. People were making silverware out of aluminum, and it was, it was this was, the thing. Wow, you have aluminum cutlery? This is amazing,
Right. And why? It's because of the way the smelting, it was so hard. I know exactly what you're talking about, because I remember Napoleon, he and his higher generals would eat off aluminum, and he would have the lessers eat off of gold and silver flatware. And that's so great. In our society, we're like, wow, that's really crazy. But yeah, it just goes to show how things flip flop and change. So I liked your idea, Mike, with how, depending on where you get the wood, there's that shade difference. And Harry, just as a way to really kind of create some tension in the world, when you think of these nobles and whatnot, I can almost see so I'm bringing a gift to the king, and I present him with this bloodwood chest that I've had commissioned, and it's just a shade lighter than that next guy. So it's oh, how dare he up me that way, kind of a thing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Even if you're here's a bowl made out of bloodwood, You know, and it's like a crimson, like this beautiful crimson bloodwood. You know, it would be, you know, worth more than if you gave the king his entire weight in platinum. And it's like, this is, you know, you are great and powerful heroes, not only to be able to do this, but I mean, then if you think about it, this creates an entire subsection of trades. You know, maybe working bloodwood is extremely difficult, and only certain people can do it. So it's like, hey, you know what? I've got this coin, you know, this dial, let's say, about a foot and a half, 2 feet in diameter. You know, this whole coin, like this whole big dial of a log, of a bloodwood log. You know, can you make this into a platter or a bowl or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's like, oh wow, man, no, I can't work with bloodwood. You know, that's beyond my capabilities. Perhaps bloodwood is either so incredibly fragile that only the most delicate, like working with obsidian. Obsidian, you can't not just anyone can work with obsidian. You have to be very, very careful with working with this. Could be the very same with bloodwood. Or conversely, it can be so hard that, you know, even with mithril chisels and hammers, you know, even the greatest strength, you cannot dent this. You know, it has to be worked very special, possibly even with arcane magics, to be able to do it. And it's that, you know, again, we get that dichotomy. It's that dichotomy of the arcane and natural magic, you know, kind of colliding with each other, and that can create these things. Perhaps even if you really wanted to go a little off the rails, perhaps every log could be destined to be something, possibly, but it's only when the arcane and natural magics hit each other that the thing becomes what it was destined to become. In this and again, as nature is very chaotic unto itself, you know, that's what it can become. So, you know, you never know what you're getting. You know, you could have like a whole full-on log, you know, bring it to the sawmill, and the only way they can use it, the only way they can shape it or work it, is with arcane energy. And, you know, using that magic, you know, having it fight against the natural magic, and maybe this is what is causing, you know, this archdruid, like maybe either causes him pain or you know, he's losing, you know, his force, and that's why it's so well defended, so well protected. You know, every tree is against you, every blade of grass. You know, even the leaves that fall from the trees can cut you. You know, they can fall like razor leaves, and even the blights. You know, everything is meant to keep you or destroy you, and not let you go into this wood.
Yeah, yeah, I really dig that. I love that when you were mentioning that about like logs being destined for something. I immediately thought of sculptors, Mike, and sculptors will do that. They don't grab a piece of granite or marble and say this is going to be a statue of this. They look at it and say what is trapped within this block, and it's kind of maybe that same thing. Maybe there's these bloodwood craftsmen. And I don't know, Harry, how you want to work it, whether it's a combination of arcane and natural magics and just, you know, skill. And that's what they do. They look at this wood, and that's what it is. Like someone could say, you know, I want a chest, and they would look at it and say, that's not a chest, that's this. And I think that's maybe that brittleness comes from, Mike. If you try to force it to be something it's not, maybe you still might make it, but you would see those flaws throughout it. Like you'd see these fine cracks through the woodwork, and anyone that would really know their craft would look at it and say, that was a forced item from this. This is not the true intent of that bloodwood. But yeah, that was really great. So maybe we should talk more about. So Mike has mentioned blights and like the forest itself. Just I think of Fangorn, right? That's probably one of the most noise. Or from Macbeth. You know, you think of the forest, like all the soldiers have the things. So it's almost like this forest is like alive and moving, and everything is just working against them. But what else might be there? Is there anything, Harry? Do you see anything living in Torna that might be more natural, like you know, like fauna? Would there be like wildlife? Would there be cultures, or would there people, or would humanoids not be there at all?
I don't think humanoids would be there, or maybe only the pilgriming druids, but
yeah.
But I'm thinking like maybe this would be somewhere that Faye would want to live, and sort of more. There'd be more sort of parasites, because they're not like part of the organism. They're sort of living within it, but they'd still be sort of accepted, I think, because there'd be no way of hiding from this thing, because it is everything around you,
Right.
and it senses
That makes
everything.
sense. Yeah.
But when we think of mundane animals and whatnot, those would probably be something that one would find within the woods, because those would be accepted, or do you think or would it be, that's one of the unsettling things about it. It's like it's devoid of what you would expect to see. You don't hear birds. You don't see like small land animals skittering around through the underbrush and through the treetops.
Yeah.
Maybe is it like deadly silent, and all it is, and you constantly hear the creaking and moving of trees and whatnot. So even if you're not maybe under attack, it's like out of the corner of your eye, you always see something move, but as you turn, it's like the tree is still there. It's not moving, kind of, and it just creates that unsettling feel.
So
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's definitely the kind of thing where a GM could run it and very much give it that horror, horror, like perception checks for no reason.
Yeah.
Things
The
like
noise.
that.
Yeah, like noises like whales, or I did this one time in a woods called the Deadwood, and there was exactly that. There was like almost devoid of any life, and it was dark, and I made players make checks all the time, and they were like, "What's going on? What's going on? What's coming? What's coming?" And nothing was coming, but it was like it was just building up, building up for them. And so when something finally did happen, they were just like, "Oh, God, oh God," and it's like it was great.
Panic, yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder if Torna would be like that, and it's like only the bravest go in there, or maybe these great. And then I guess maybe they can. You would have to maybe convince a druid, right? Because other than that, your success rate is probably close to zero if you don't have a druid with you,
oh yeah,
or some other type of powerful magic that might shield you or block you from.
Well, maybe so, but then the other thing you can look at too is that, how many druids would sacrifice what they are to lead people in.
Right.
So I mean, like there could be a severe penalty, for doing that, or a druid might be, under like maybe even like a hostage and forced to try and take them through. And this could be a whole thing of like, I'm not going to help you, I'm not going to try and keep these things off you, but you're forcing me in here, then fine, And so I mean, there's that. There could also be that, perhaps some druids are under attack. Perhaps all you need is the blood of a druid to be able to walk in. So some druids get kidnapped and bled, and filled in like vials where like an amulet, so they can actually walk in. So perhaps if you're not a druid, you try to walk in, and then the trees just move closer together, or brambles come up, and you just can't fight through it. It's just too they're too gnarled, they're too thick. But if you have the blood of a druid, then you can pass. Things just kind of move out of your way. Trees sway apart, so you have paths. Other than that, the entire thing, there's like no pathways at all. And it's very easy to get lost. Perhaps, and again, then that's how some people are able to get in. But even then, you still have to fight against everything that is in there that is trying to kill you. Perhaps even the streams. People go in there and they try and drink from the streams. They turn sour, or it turns like bad, and and it's just becomes stagnant pools. So every time they try and use something, it rots, or it disappears, or it goes back into the ground, or something to that effect. So everything they try and do. So when they go in, they have to come in with like either large caravans, or like lots of packs of like extra food and everything else. Fires, anything with fires, they just go out. So there's no way to actually have a fire. So I mean, if they're not able to, see in the dark, then it's very easy to get killed. So I mean, there's lots of different things and different prospects that you can use to make these like very, this
Right.
very dark, very foreboding kind of an area.
Yeah, so I would see moving through this forest as always difficult terrain, magical difficult terrain. So even rangers would have a hard time moving through it unless they are truly skilled at moving through magically obstructed terrain, and moving the folks that they're with through that. But I would probably think rangers would do the same thing. They would probably come on the side of many druids and saying, "I'm not leading you in there. You have your purpose to go in there is nothing but to make wealth for yourself. There's no purpose to that." I love that. I love that idea about like wearing some sort of like symbology of a druid, like some blood from them. Maybe there's certain words of power I think we had talked about earlier, that would have to be said that would kind of separate out or keep the woods at bay. But on top of the difficult terrain, like one of the things when I did the Darkwood game is the tree cover was so dense that even in the bright sunny day, it was dim light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. Um, Sorry, could you just excuse me for just a couple minutes? So I'm really sorry, guys.
That's right.
No, that's
We'll
fine.
just keep on chatting for a little bit. The stream looks very funny now. It's got like Mike's face, and then
Yeah.
part of your cupboard next to it.
Yes. All right.
Of your
All right. So this is what I'm thinking. So most of the time in stories that I've seen is with like places like Torna are actually receding, like as civilization kind of expands, they recede. But I'm just going to throw this out there, and you can let me know if it fits or not, Harry. But I'm actually thinking Torna's the opposite of that. It's like almost like the desert.
Yeah.
It actually, as time passes, it's slowly getting bigger
Yep.
and bigger. And at times it's really just civilization just fighting just to hold it back so that it doesn't keep spreading.
That's what I'm
So
thinking.
it's so yeah, I think that would be awesome. So that would be like one way that there's that contention, like, well, we have to take down the trees.
I've just
So
thought
there
something.
probably might.
Sorry, I think with these druids going on their pilgrimage, perhaps this thing's growing. It's because these druids are going there to die, and putting their life
And it
energies into this
Eats
forest.
this life force, so it's
Yep.
gaining more strength and power.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. We're creating another place that is just going to be ripe with
Yeah, I just
some
nice
nice
thought of a one shot for
adventure
this.
adventure hooks and one shots. I mean, definitely. I mean, you could definitely have a party go in there, Harry, and it's not even a one shot. My party was in there for like two or three sessions,
Yeah.
and you could easily. I don't want to say milk because that sounds terrible, but I mean you could literally get a few sessions of really good play out of there. There. I mean, maybe you said there's kind of this kind of this kind of loose treaty or whatever with the Fae. So maybe other creatures that are tied to the Fae. So I think of warlocks. Maybe warlocks that are patron to the Fae. Maybe that's a place where they might find refuge or whatnot from
Yeah.
maybe some persecution that's happening outside. Um,
Um,
so
and going back to other creatures, I was thinking perhaps the things that are living in here are sort of manifesting from this druid's dreams, as he sort of he is the forest, and he is like very powerful. And this forest is just pure magic. So whatever he's dreaming is sort of becoming manifest and murdering, or maybe murdering the party or whatever, or maybe they're just illusions. Like it doesn't, or maybe a mixture of both.
this is a total spoiler, but how about this? As you said that, I think in earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons, it's been a long time since I've played any of those, but I think druids used to go into these long sleeps, these long there's almost catatonic sleeps. So maybe this druid's not dead. Maybe he's asleep somewhere deep within this forest, and it's exactly that, Harry. As he's having dreams, as he's in this sleep state, that's what's doing that, and that's what's maybe spreading it out. I don't know how you feel about that, but as you were saying that, I was like, wow, that's a great idea. I mean, maybe he's not dead.
Yeah,
He's just been asleep for so long.
just sort of encapsulated in this giant tree in the center of the forest, going for that.
Yeah, it's like grown it up around him, so like you wouldn't even be able to maybe see him, um, you could like literally if there was a you could like literally walk right past him and no one would even know where this slumbering archdruid is.
Yeah, that's totally possible. I mean, you could have it, in a sense that perhaps maybe, the forest has just been an entire manifestation of his dreams.
Yes.
He could have gone just up to a tree, like on a in a valley where it just had one tree, and perhaps meditating deeply, this powerful archdruid. He could have meditated so deeply that he just became one and has begun to manifest this this great forest out of simply himself, right? Like just
Mhm.
from his own incredible magical power and ties to nature itself. And as a result, both his nightmares and his pleasant dreams have created this great thing out of simply his desire for the natural world and everything else.
Mm.
Perhaps even being dejected about the spread of technology and the widespread destruction of the natural world with mining and forestry and and fishing and farming, just taking away land, that forests and natural rivers and the mountains and everything else, everything around it has been turned into something to be taken and used. Perhaps he felt dejected, and he felt that he saw this one old tree that has just been like, kind of sitting in the middle of nowhere, and he just, from this thing, he just wanted to protect this one tree, just to keep some semblance of nature. And as a result, he just became one with the tree and has since spread out
Mm.
and created this forest.
Yeah, I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so,
So, so like as you're saying, Mike. So as he's having these, like when he has the nightmares versus when he's having these very pleasant dreams, and from that sprout the both the dark and the light elements within this forest. You get the darker, more twisted, evil, like creatures and beings within the forest, and then you have the more lighter.
Well, I mean, if anything, like once he dreams something, it becomes manifest within the bounds of the forest. So, for example, if let's say you're running it, and the players are like booking it out of the forest, and these blights are chasing them, like all these blights. As soon as they come out of the forest, the blights just they explode into like twigs and
Yes.
just kind of like tumble because they're done, they're gone.
Right.
They can only exist as a manifestation
Within that.
inside the forest. So I mean, everything can kill you, but once it's dreamed into place, it is there. Um,
It's yeah, you can almost see the desperation on the party's face as they see like the opening is in the trees and there's that brightness beyond. And we get through there, we've made it. And it's like as it starts to close on them and the blights are like leaping at them and clawing at them. Oh yeah, that just is groovy. So one of the things we were just chatting about when you stepped away, Mike, is I said unlike like most times when we think of like forests and whatnot, and we think of man civilization rising, we think of those sorts of things like diminishing and getting smaller. And what I proposed to Harry was it's the opposite for this forest. It's actually growing like deserts oftentimes will it's spreading,
mhm,
and that's what
yeah.
civilization is actually doing. Not sometimes it's just trying to keep it back, it's trying to keep it from spreading out, and it's just kind of just like pulsing out from this druid as he's like whether he's feeling happy, kind of warm and fuzzy, or whether he's just like angry, and maybe that's because someone has just encroached in on here and cut down or tried to cut down this great tree or something. Um, so yeah, that's really cool. I love that too. That yeah, especially like these art incantations within the forest just can't exist outside of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean that's what, and I think that makes for a very interesting game, especially when you have this like, well, who's in the wrong? I mean, we're the players, and yeah, and that's fine, but I mean, this forest is just trying to survive. It's fighting to survive, and that's the cool
Right.
thing about nature is that nature is not inherently good or evil.
Right.
Nature is cruel, but there's kind of rules, like for example, a doe and a fawn are surrounded by hungry wolves. So the doe and the fawn could get away, but the wolves go hungry and their pups starve. Or conversely, the doe and the fawn get killed and eaten, and the doe and the fawn die, and they just get dragged back.
Right.
So their hungry puppies can eat. It's not a question of what is good and what is evil. The wolves aren't
Right.
malicious. Wolves need to survive. Deer aren't malicious by eating all the vegetation. They're trying to survive, right? It's just
Right.
that's essentially what it is. And then when you start playing off that theme, especially with this forest, the forest isn't inherently good or evil. The forest is trying to survive, and as such, anyone that comes into it will be subsequently attacked or pushed out.
Right.
There's a chance that if this druid has any type of like conscious or is any type of like good, perhaps he's just trying to he or she is trying to just
Yeah.
no, you can't come in, go away, no, and trying giving them
Right.
warnings,
Right.
unless
Yeah.
of course they don't listen, in which case, okay, well, that's the end of you.
Yeah, like if you're in there, you get you're given these warnings, and maybe roots and stuff like push and drag you out or toss you out, and it's when you do something that is an affront to the nature. Yeah, I like how you said that, Mike. Yeah, rather than the good and the evil thing, it's just a force of nature. That's exactly what it is. It's not good nor evil. I think that's more like civilization puts those labels on it. The evil forest of Torna, or whatnot. But that's more their perception, though in a natural sense, yeah, it's that circle of life that you talked about, Mike. So I really like that. Geez, I had an idea and I can't remember what it was. I think I lost it.
So, another thing to make this forest a little bit more on the sinister side, which I like, is around the sort of this going with this dream thing, this to entice things in and to feed this forest. Perhaps around the edges, these sort of you get bird song, you get deer, jumping around, frolicking in the meadows and whatever, and then as you go further and further into this sort of wonderful, enchanting place, suddenly the world sort of fizzles down around you, and then you're just trapped in this dense, dark, horrible forest that's trying to kill you, just to sort of entice you in with that magical sort of fey energy.
Right.
It most certainly can. I mean, natural beauty is natural beauty. So, as you look at these beautiful tall old trees and these the sun just casting through small glades and other things and groves and whatnot have you, and even babbling streams and all this very beautiful things of nature. Yeah, I mean, it's enticing unto itself. But of course, the enticement, and I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to look enticing.
Yeah.
But the sheer fact that if you go into this trade of this item that's more valuable than platinum, this bloodwood, that is an enticement unto itself. Geez, all I got to do is go in, chop down a tree, and then book it the hell out, and I could make enough money to feed my family for 5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I could just grab a very thick branch of this stuff. It's so easy. It's right there. That's the key.
So,
And I think that's one thing that's that would be so enticing. I mean, it's the same thing with gold panning, right? Oh, all I got to do is go to a stream with a pan, and I can make a bunch of money. Well, it's not that easy, but people make it out to be that easy. So a lot of people are they walk in and perhaps if there are small towns that have sprung up around this forest, where people daredevils go in there to try and snag a log or try and snag a fallen tree, even a tree that had fallen over and died, or perhaps the only way to cut down or the only way to get actual bloodwood is to chop one down. So if one dies naturally, you can't just pull it out because it loses its beautiful color. It just becomes a standard tree. But as it's still alive, it has this, this beautiful red, which is why people are trying to, hack down the trees and then like book it out as quickly as possible.
Or maybe there's events, you talked about these towns that maybe it would sprout up around here. Maybe there's events, like maybe after a big storm, maybe there's events where they get these expeditions that go in to try to find tree fall and stuff like that, because it's like easy pickings. We can grab this stuff quickly. We don't have to be cutting down a tree, and hopefully we can get right out of there. But yeah, maybe there's a time frame, like,
maybe
after so many days or so many weeks, the blood's out, or does it happen like you said, Mike, right when the tree dies? So does the qualities of the bloodwood. So one of the things I remembered what my idea was. So I was thinking, and this is a way to kind of continue to build that tension, is really kind of creating this rumor or whatnot that maybe one of the things that kind of is whispered around, like why people go in and they don't come out, maybe isn't always because the forest kills you, but you lose yourself within this forest. It's kind of like you were talking about, Mike. There's the enticing way in which the forest pulls you in, it draws you in, and maybe this beauty, this kind of raw beauty that this forest has, if you spend too much time in there, you lose yourself to it. So it's almost like, all right, we got to go in there, but man, we only got like 3 days, man, in and out. If we stay there much beyond that, we're probably going to be lost. Kind of an ideal.
That's entirely possible. And what a lot of people might not know would be that in like when you lose yourself, as it were, you actually end up, becoming like a thrall or a follower of this archdruid. Like, you realize that you don't want to take anything out; you want to help protect it.
Yeah.
And
right.
it becomes that thing where you almost become like, and this could be a thing where instead of there's no civilization in there, maybe there are just wandering people. They call themselves maybe the caretakers or something, and they go in and they continue to try and protect as well. So you not just have like, animals and plants and everything else, but you have individuals who are, silently stalking people and, killing them maybe, when they go to sleep or, just going in there and trying to hunt them, because it's okay to hunt them, but not animals. And perhaps, they don't eat. Maybe the forest is like they don't need to eat, so maybe a lot of them are emaciated. Perhaps even if they die, perhaps they are like this kind of like strange undead plant, kind of thing. Think of like The Last of Us, this like kind of fungal, this kind of fungal mold, where they're these just abomination creatures, like just stalking people that go in and try and take the wood or whatnot have you.
Right. Yeah, I think of like maybe like a shambling mound type thing, but more humanoid. Like you would still be able to see maybe some of that humanity there, but it would have roots and stuff twisted in and along across them. And maybe when you cut them, they don't bleed. Maybe they bleed blood, but maybe they bleed sap and other stuff too. That's awesome. Yeah. And I could just think of like the reaction. I think of like, Mike, in our game a couple weeks ago when we faced that bear that was kind of twisted by nature. I mean, my reaction was just like, oh my God, what is that? So it's kind of like as a player, that's like when you see something like that, because you're used to like the standard tropey zombie kind of a thing. But when you see something that's kind of like a zombie, but not quite, like it's a more natural zombie. And I think some of your players might be even questioning, wait, maybe we can save them if we can just, and maybe you can. Maybe there is some way that you can save them, and maybe that's another adventure hook for you, Harry. Oh, you have to go in there. I lost my husband. I can't support my 3 kids. He was in there for, a week ago, kind of thing. And these brave adventures, like, we'll do this kind of thing. And you go in there and they try to save this guy, try to find and save this guy, which I think would be pretty futile based on the forest we're creating. But hey, adventurers do crazy stuff all the time. That makes them heroic. That's awesome. And I bet there's some great art out there if you kind of mind around, Harry, that would have like kind of those twisty, like, I remember seeing this great druid art that was exactly like that, and it was like these vines and stuff all twisted around this druid, and he's holding a staff, and it was awesome.
although you won't be able to
yeah,
see yourselves, I have switched the scene. Hopefully, it's worked to some art that I've found. I'll try and link it down in the description. The artists, but I'll send you the links afterwards so you guys can see it as well. But yeah, there's sort of very sort of dense. There's sort of dancing lights in some of them. And there's even a party of adventurers sort of going through this forest. Although I think these pictures are a little bit too bright and happy. Want to do it a little bit darker.
I think Mike brought up a good point, though. It doesn't have to be dark and evil and sinister. It really doesn't. It actually, maybe that's one of the things. People go in there thinking it's going to be dark and sinister and terrible, but it's not. It's actually, when you think of like like the forest in Mirkwood, when you think of where the wood elves live, I mean, it's not as dark and sinister as like where they kind of encounter the large spiders. So there's these pockets of beauty. So
yeah, I mean,
I think it's all perception.
Exactly. I mean, it can still look beautiful, but it can still be terrible. And a lot of times that's that's more of a frightening aspect than it's like, I know that this thing is evil, even though it's not inherently evil, because it's nature. It just is. It's cruel, but it just is.
Yeah, definitely. Right, I think it's probably come to a natural conclusion there, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Just rambling for around 50 minutes.
It's called brainstorming, Harry. Brainstorming.
Brainstorming. Barkstorming.
Barnstorming.
So yeah, join us again next week, and thank you very much, Mike, for joining us.
Thank you. I had a great time. I really enjoyed myself, and I look forward to the next time you guys do another brainstorming session.
All right. Very good.
Right. See you guys again next week.